Hello, I am Dr. Yi-Min Huang, the Assistant Professor of the Department of Civil Engineering from逢甲University. Today, I would like to share the study of inspection of hydraulic and slope stabilizing structures by using UAV and high-resolution thermal imaging. Today's presentation will start with the purposes. We will talk about the purpose of this test pilot project. Then we will spend more time talking about the sampling procedures and our first test run and its results. The purpose of this pilot study is try to find a way of using UAV with a thermal camera to help us non-destructive inspection, especially for the hydraulic and slope stabilizing structures. And we want to find a safe way to help our colleagues to do the jobs when we conduct the inspection at the remote areas, we can using UAV and the thermal images. So that is our major goal of this test pilot project. So in the following presentation, I will share with you about our initial stage, the first test run results, and also the analysis from the images. These are our study areas. We choose the mountain area in the middle of Taiwan, and there are two villages, Nangang Village and Tannan Village was chosen. And we're focusing on the construction structures like the embankments, retaining walls, and box culverts. We choose 7 locations from these 2 villages as shown on the map. And from the literature review, we found that there's lots of application of using thermal images. Most of them focusing on the temperature difference whenever there's water present. So we can find out that there's a hidden water body behind the walls, or we can find out the cracks because of the temperature difference. And also we find out there's a case using the thermal image to help inspecting the defects of the concrete along a very old bridges. So in these studies, we try to find out the defects of the concrete structures. So the first step, we need to determine the locations, as I present you in the previous slides. So we check out the Google Earth before we go outdoors, and then we try to find out any documents related to the locations. And we also need to determine the timing of taking the operations by considering the weather forecast as well as the routes of the traffic. Then we need to apply for the UAV permission in Taiwan. Then we will design our flight path, try to cover the whole area as complete as possible. Then we will take in photos. When we take in the photos, we take in 2 types of the photos together. One is the original or the general RGB photos. Another one is the thermal images. So we take out the thermal images and we run the image processing by the computer. We will highlight the thermal image, and then we can find the difference of the temperature. Then based on the thermal image processing, we can perform initial analysis about the images. And when we're talking about the image processing, we're using the commercial program FLIR to help us to do the jobs. There are 6 different types of highlighting the thermal images. In this pilot study, we choose the iron color set to highlight the thermal images. So our first test run was conducted on February and March 2021, and we choose the 7 locations and at the 2 townships. So we control our UAV at the altitude of the 10 meters and manually control to carry our thermographic camera and taking photos. Here are the examples of the photos from 6 locations. So from this slide, location 1 and 2 are check dams. And from the thermal image below, we can clearly find there's a temperature difference where there probably there's a water seepage or probably there's a defect on the surface. And on the location 3 is the photo of the embankment. We can clearly find there's a possible location of the cracks along the embankment surface. So for these 3 photos, location 5, 6, and 7, there are check dams, and we can highlight those location based on the thermal image. We found that there's a holes and also some gaps between the structural surface, and also there's some something different, irregular lines, patterns on the surface of the concrete. So let's take a close look and to try to summarize the findings of the photos. So for the slit dam in the photos, we noticed that there's possible cracks development on the surface of the concrete. We will also find that there are probably another different types of the defects on the surface of the concrete. So the thermal image can tell us additional information about the defects. So when we compare the RGB photos with the thermal image, we can easily find out the difference based on the temperature difference. Another close look is on the embankment. So from these photos, we notice there's a holes at the bottom of the embankment, and thermal image also shows a clear, dark colors over there. And those are the coring holes used for material testing. And the location from the photo, number 2 and number 3 are the irregular linear patterns, which we think that could be a suspected cracks development. But we need a further validation. Sometimes the dark color or the irregular linear patterns not necessarily mean to the cracks. So we need to categorize the findings after the image processing. So for our initial stage, we have several conclusions. We found that the thermal image can potentially capture the defects, holes, and the suspected cracks on the surface of the hydraulic concrete structures. And through the comparison of the thermal image and RGB image, we can identify the location of the cracks. And we want to identify the identification of the cracks into a database. So we need more photos and we need samples to clearly highlight the cracks locations. And also we found that we can use the linear patterns. Sometimes the darker linear patterns appear in the bright regions may represent some defects on the concrete surface. So our next steps will include, we will extend our photos. So we will check out at more regions, at more carriers. And we also want to consider the influence of the light conditions. For example, the daytime or during the noon or after the sunset. We want to take the photos at a different time of the day, and to compare the images, the thermal image difference between from the different shooting times. And our final goal is try to establish a thermal image database for later AI training, and then can help us to identify the potential defects or cracks automatically. So this is our today's talk about applying thermal image and also how to use the UAV to help us to do the inspection works. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question, you can contact me through the email. Thank you.